Hey, what's up guys? Coach Corey Jones. Today I wanted to take some time to talk about getting sober from alcohol specifically. Now, you can probably use this with other drugs, but the reason I want to talk about alcohol is because that's what I have personal experience in. So whether you're listening to the podcast or watching on YouTube, hang out for a few minutes. If getting sober is something that interests you, but you're not really sure how to, I'm going to tell you how to right now. Now, I want to first start off by saying that if you do have a drinking problem or a substance abuse problem, don't just watch this video and go try to get sober. Please seek medical attention or medical care, as I'm not necessarily giving you advice on how to do it for your own personal circumstances. I'm more so going to be talking about the mindset required in order to quit drinking or using substances. Like I said, drinking for me, but this could potentially work with other substances, as it's more of a mindset technique to kind of help you bridge that gap from substance abuse to sobriety. If you haven't seen my journey to sobriety video or listening to our podcast episode, I recommend going back and listening to that or watching the video, as it has a lot of information on me and my wife's personal journey with sobriety. But to sum that up pretty quickly, so just to give you guys some context to this video if you haven't seen that one, I'm currently 32 years old and I'm going on 6 years sober. I started drinking when I was about 11 years old, and I drank as consistently as I could, meaning when I can get my hands on it. Wasn't all that much. But once I got into high school and beyond, alcohol became a lot more accessible, so I developed a pretty heavy binge drinking habit that went on until I was about 26 years old. Like I said, I'm 32 now, I'm going on 6 years sober, but I spent about 14 good solid years of my life pretty much doing nothing but drinking. Now don't get me wrong, I joined the military, I did have a life, I did do things that I thought were cool. I was what you would consider a functioning alcoholic, meaning I drank a fuck ton, and I still managed to get to work and still managed to get promoted and progress through my job. But in my opinion, and especially now looking back, I can say it held me back from just about every single thing that I truly wanted to accomplish in life. So lots of experience on my end with drinking, and I definitely have experience overcoming it. We had our firstborn son in 2014, and I drank for about 9 months after he was born and then quit altogether before he turned a year old. And that was pretty much because I was going to lose my family. My wife was ready to leave if I didn't change my habits. So having the son was a powerful enough reason for me to quit drinking. And I want to start off by saying that that's probably going to be the number one indicator as to whether or not you're ready to quit drinking or not, or give up a substance or not, is, are you truly ready for it? I'm a fitness coach, and in the fitness industry, you'll hear us talk about your why a lot. Your why is very important. Why you're doing something is going to be very important in determining whether or not you succeed, because certain things like losing a lot of weight or giving up a habit like drinking take a lot of willpower. They require a lot of self-discipline and commitment, and it takes time. You can't just be like, you know what, I'm going to quit, and then the next day you're sober and things are great. I mean, you can be sober and never turn back, but before you kind of get that sense of relief or sense of accomplishment, it takes a while. You know, typically you'll go 3 months sober, you'll go 6 months, a year, and you'll have these milestone celebrations. But those take time to get to. Like I said, they do take willpower. They take a lot of consistency, self-discipline, and a lot of times they take a good support network. So that being said, it's a very powerful change you're going to go through. You need to make sure that you're absolutely ready for that. And your why you're doing it is really going to determine whether or not you're actually ready to give up drinking or whatever substance it is that kind of controls your life. I say that it controls your life because more often than not, when we use a substance, we are in fact a slave to that, meaning we don't feel confident without it. We don't feel like we can be ourselves, or we can go out into a social setting without that substance. And that's exactly what I suffered for 14 years. I love public speaking now. I love getting behind a camera. I love getting in front of an audience. I love performing. I love the courage it takes to do something like that. But I will tell you that 6-7 years ago, I didn't have the courage or the social ability to do something like that, because I relied heavily on my drinking. My drinking is what gave me my comfort. It's what gave me my confidence. I didn't think I could have fun without it. And, you know, when you first quit, that's a big part of the change. And that's a big part of what you have to adapt to, is not having that crutch to give you those feelings of power or those feelings of confidence when you need them the most. And I think that's probably what can make it hardest for people to actually quit, is that level of discomfort that you feel when you first give it up, because you're not going to feel, you're going to be socially awkward to a certain degree. I certainly was. I don't consider myself socially awkward anymore, but I was socially awkward. You're not going to have the confidence to do certain things. But most importantly, in my opinion, and I think this is the most important thing that you need to understand in order to quit drinking, is that you need to get rid of the misconception that you can't have fun without alcohol. Because I believe that there's a lot of people out there who probably have a drinking problem but may not necessarily be true alcoholics. And the reason that you're not quitting is because you don't think that you can have fun without alcohol. Whether that means that you don't know what you would do without it, or that means that you can't go into a social setting and be yourself and get creative and be loud and be funny without it. And I really want that to kind of be the point of this video and this podcast, is to have you really take that into consideration. Do you think you can have a good time without alcohol? Because I think, like I said, I think that's the number one thing that prevents people from quitting or even looking into quitting, is they want to enjoy life. We want, as human beings, we want to be happy. And when there's the fear that we're going to lose that we may possibly give up that feeling of happiness and that feeling of joy by quitting drinking, it's going to make it a lot harder to overcome all those obstacles that I named earlier, the self-discipline, the willpower. It's going to make it very challenging for us to say, you know what, I'm about to be miserable and hate my life, but this is what's best for me. Especially for those of us who were in that position of functioning alcoholic or functioning substance abuser, in which we didn't necessarily think we had a problem. Because, you know, I drank pretty consistently for about 14 years, but it took me, 8 or 9 of those years to truly realize I had a problem. I thought I had it in control for the most part. I didn't think I had a problem because I could still show up to work, I could maintain relationships. I just blacked out like every night. And I think any sane person will look at that and be like, dude, you got a fucking problem. I didn't realize I had a problem. And I think that a lot of people probably find themselves in that same position. And I think that's when it's going to be hardest to let go of something, is when, one, you don't think you have a problem, and two, you believe that by getting rid of something that you don't think is a problem, you're going to take away the fun that you had. You're going to make your life to where it is not as fun, where you can't go out with the girls or the guys on a Friday night and still have a good time. Now, there's other things, like I said, like being social, being confident. Maybe you're afraid that you won't be able to talk to people of the opposite sex without that liquid courage. Those are things that I've experienced progress with firsthand, and I want you to understand that you can too. By giving up something that's essentially holding you back, you can be more social. You can create confidence for yourself. You don't have to be socially awkward. You can have just as much, if not more, fun being sober than you can on any sort of substance. And this was hard for me to believe at first, because I had done it a few times, and when I first quit drinking, it was really hard for me. I had a really hard time having fun. I was very socially awkward. I felt very uncomfortable in certain places. What allowed me to continue on that, with that journey, though, was having my son, was remembering all the interactions with him, was progressing through work a little bit better, not showing up hungover. There was these small term changes that showed me like, hey, even though you're not enjoying your nightlife on Friday and Saturday, you're still feeling better here. You're still doing better in these departments. So maybe this is something you should continue forward with. So that mindset kind of drove me to continue with my goal of never drinking again. I'd say at about 6 months after I quit drinking, it was just like this magical sense of self-discovery that I had gone through. And that was that I felt like at that point I was finally a different person. I felt like the awkwardness of not drinking and being around people, of going out to a bar or a restaurant and not having to go straight to a drink, were finally, I felt like I was finally normal and I could enjoy my time without those feelings. And like I said, there's many secondary benefits that come from it. You're not going to be hungover Monday at work. You're not going to go to work on Monday and be like embarrassed to be around certain people. I know some of you guys out there know exactly what I'm talking about. You go to work and you're afraid to lock eyes with somebody at first, because you know that they were where you were Friday night and you don't remember anything you said or did, and you're afraid that they might have, and now you don't know how to act around them. Makes things awkward at work. It makes things awkward within the household, within the family. I never had to worry about that again. I also became a much cheaper date. When I'd go out to restaurants, I wouldn't order 3 or 4 beers. You order 3 or 4 IPAs and you're looking at an additional like $25 added onto your bill. If you're at a restaurant where it already costs, you know, $40 a person, now you're getting into the hundreds just on your own. And if you have a spouse who drinks too, you're looking at a $200 bill tab just because you want to cover the drinks. And let me ask you, like, how many memories do you have right now where you look back on a night going out to a restaurant getting drinks and you're like, that was the best night ever, or that was, you're proud of it? If you're anything like me, I'd be willing to bet that there's not many occasions where you're super proud of what you did from drinking, or the memories were that great, where the money was that well spent. If anything, if you're anything like me and you're discovering that you have a problem, there was a lot of regret. I look back on life and there's a lot of things that I regret from drinking, whether it be long-term issues that I have, or, you know, short-term relationship issues, communication issues, bouts of embarrassment, things like that I experienced that are of negative light. I don't have many things that I look back on that are a positive light. So I pretty much got rid of, you know, all those negative secondary interactions. But the one thing I discovered after that 6-month mark, was that I'm a more creative person than I knew. I think the alcohol was kind of clouding a lot of my creativity. I never thought I was an artistic person. I never thought I was a funny person. You know, things that I used to try to do, like play music and working out, a lot of like the bodybuilding stuff I got into, that was my form of creative expression. And those whole 14 years of drinking, I had never experienced that. I didn't experience any of that stuff until I was at least 6 months sober. But then I realized and I learned that once I did kind of tap into that creative side and that side of me that was fun without drinking, and that was, you know, a good time, that was confident, I almost felt like I had developed a superpower, and that those characteristics were compounding and they were getting stronger and better. And the more time that went on, the more confident I got. The more time that went by, the more fun I was having without drinking. So now, after being 6 years sober, I look back on my life and I'm like, and my wife will tell you the same thing, I'm a completely different person. I'm much more fun and funny and charismatic and socially entertaining and capable and confident than I ever was when I drank. But that one fear of not being able to have fun and not having confidence and not being able to be social in social settings was the one thing that made that transition the hardest. It wasn't the fear of any alcohol withdrawals. I can't honestly think of anything really other than like the fear of commitment. I think the fear of commitment was pretty big. Like, am I really going to be able to do this for a lifetime? That fear of commitment and that fear of not being able to have fun were probably like the two strongest factors that had stopped me from getting sober up until the point that I finally did. And then once I finally did, like I said, I looked back, I continue to look back to this day, and I never regret or bring into question those decisions I made. This was in September of 2015, and I have never once thought about going back. And that's because I feel like I'm finally at that point where I transitioned into the person I am today. But I could have never became the person I am today if I didn't ditch the person I was before, that functioning alcoholic, that life of the party, the loud one in the bar that always gets us kicked out or is always making people laugh. I had to lose that shitty, fake personality to get to where I'm at today. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today, is that if you are looking to get sober and one of your big fears is making that commitment of basically giving up on fun, giving up on your nightlife, no longer having the confidence or being social around people, if you're afraid to become sober, let me just tell you that I think that's a completely normal feeling. And it's going to hit pretty hard at first. Like I said, the first few months of transition will be very challenging, because anytime you change in life, it's going to be very challenging. I can't think of one time I've had substantial change where it was just a breeze. Even if you're changing for something for the better, it's going to be awkward and it's going to be uncomfortable. So you're going to experience that. But once you pass that, you're going to be able to look at yourself as a completely different person. All those things that you were fearing you wouldn't have, you're going to have at an exponential rate. You're going to have those same traits. You're going to be fun. You're going to be able to go out and have a good time and go out and enjoy your nightlife 10 times better than you ever were when you were drinking. So I think that's why I chose that idea, and that mindset is the number one most important factor that helped me quit drinking, because I do believe that the fear of commitment and the fear of not having fun anymore and not being that same person you are is the number one thing that is keeping people from becoming sober. Now, I do believe alcohol is a toxin. I don't believe anything good does come from it. But at the same time, I will never try to encourage somebody who doesn't want to be sober to be sober. I think that you'll make leaps and bounds of progress, and I think you'll become a totally better person. But I'm not going to say that you have a problem or care about your self-development more than you are. So I'm not here advocating for sobriety. What I am here to tell you, though, is that if you are looking to become sober for a reason, you think you have a problem or you think it's holding you back some way, even if it's on a minor scale, even if you just don't like being hungover anymore, even if you just want to save money by not going out and buying drinks, it's going to turn into one of the best decisions you've ever made. You're going to experience so much more personal growth. Like I said, you're going to be more confident than you've ever been. You're going to have more fun than you've ever had. It just takes a little bit of time. So understand that that fear is real, and it's real for a reason, because it's a challenging transition. But just like with fitness, just like with anything else, if it wasn't challenging, everybody would be doing it. Everybody that I know wants to be sober or wants to kind of pull back on drinking. Most people I talk to tell me that they wish that they could slow down a little bit. So I know that the desire to quit drinking is there and that it's strong. You just have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to go through that transitional period, and you have to be willing to give yourself time to grow. But just know, if the fear of not having fun anymore is a big concern to you, I don't think anybody has ever become sober before and not totally feared giving up that part of their lives. But I'd be willing to bet that if you asked any single person who has been sober for longer than a year now, or even 6 months, if they still feel that way, they'll probably laugh at you. They'll probably say, you know what, I don't know what I was thinking, but I'm 10 times better off now. I have 10 times as much fun as I ever have. I'm 10 times as much social, 10 times as much confident. I just had to grow into the person that I had the potential to be, and I couldn't let alcohol hold me back anymore. That's my story. I was a drunk for 14 years. I became sober, and like I tell people now, that has become my superpower. I'm a completely different person. My confidence levels, the amount of fun I am, the amount of fun I have, how I treat people, it is all, I've grown exponentially, and it's solely because I overcame that fear of giving up alcohol. Hopefully this helped you guys, and you've gained a new perspective through my words and my story. If you have somebody who's suffering from substance abuse and they want to get sober, send them this video or send them this podcast. It might help them out. It might be what they needed to hear to help them make that leap. If you're wanting to make that leap, I just recommend going into it with medical care, of course, head first, diving in head first. I don't think there's a better way to do it. Make sure you're doing it safely with a doctor if you need to, but get it out of your head that you're not going to be a fun person anymore. And get it out of your head that you can't have fun anymore, because that's bullshit. You can and you will, as long as you make that commitment and you stick with it. Share this video. Like, comment, subscribe to my channel, please. If you're listening on podcast, leave us an Apple review or a review on whatever platform you're listening on if you thought this was helpful. If you guys have any questions or comments about being sober, feel free to ask me. Leave it in the comment section. Shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'm always happy to talk about this stuff, and I'm always happy to help. Hopefully this helped you guys. Take care.